I wasn't trying to spy. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as my eyes drifted over the old cedar fence separating my backyard from my neighbor's. It wasn't curiosity that pulled me there every evening, it was the sound. The quiet crying. Not loud enough for anyone else to notice. Just soft, broken sobs that somehow carried farther than laughter ever could. I should have walked away. Instead, one evening, I looked. And that's when she saw me. For one unbearable second, our eyes locked. I expected anger. Maybe a shouted warning or an awkward conversation with the homeowners association later. Instead, she wiped her tears, forced the smallest smile, and said something I never could have expected. "If you're already looking," she called gently, "you might as well come help me." That invitation changed 2 lives. When I bought my little house in Columbus, Ohio, I wasn't looking for friendships. I was 34, divorced, working remotely as a software designer, and perfectly content living a quiet life. My days revolved around deadlines, frozen dinners, and pretending the silence in my home didn't bother me. The house next door had belonged to an elderly couple for decades, but after the husband passed away, his wife sold it. A month later, someone new moved in. Her name was Emma. She looked to be in her early 40s, drove an old blue pickup truck, and somehow managed to unload an entire moving truck almost by herself. I offered to help that first day. She smiled politely. "I've got it. Thank you." That was the extent of our conversation. Over the following weeks, I noticed little things. She left before sunrise. She came home after dark. Her lawn slowly became overgrown. Packages piled up on the porch until weekends. She seemed exhausted all the time. Still, she always smiled whenever our paths crossed. The kind of smile people wear when they don't want anyone asking questions. One Saturday afternoon I heard what sounded like wood breaking behind the fence. Curious, I stepped outside. That was when I heard the crying. Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just the quiet kind that escapes when someone believes they're completely alone. Without thinking, I looked over the fence. Emma stood beside what looked like a half-built greenhouse. Several wooden beams had collapsed around her. She wasn't crying because she'd been hurt. She was crying because she tried so hard, and failed. Then she looked up. Caught me watching. Instead of embarrassment, she laughed through her tears. "Well," she sighed, "I guess my construction skills aren't much of a secret anymore." I apologized immediately. "I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to invade your privacy." "I know." Then came the invitation. "If you're already looking, come help me." I walked through the side gate. The greenhouse looked like a disaster. Boards leaned in every direction. Boxes of screws sat unopened. Instruction manuals lay soaked from the morning rain. "I've been trying to build this for 3 weekends," she admitted. "I can see that." She laughed. "So can the entire neighborhood." We spent the next 4 hours rebuilding everything. Neither of us was particularly handy. We measured things wrong. Installed panels backward. Dropped enough screws to supply a hardware store. But eventually, it stood. Crooked. Ugly. Leaning slightly to one side. Perfect. Emma stared at it proudly. I've never been happier to see something so structurally questionable. We both laughed harder than either of us had in months. As the sun disappeared, she brought out lemonade. "Can I tell you why this greenhouse matters so much?" "Of course. My mom loved gardening." She paused. "She died 6 months ago." "I'm sorry." "Before she passed, she wanted to build this with me." She looked at the crooked structure. "I kept putting it off because I was busy with work." Silence settled between us. When she was gone, Emma whispered, this became the only promise I had left to keep. Suddenly the tears I'd heard made perfect sense. The greenhouse wasn't about plants. It was about regret. Over the next several weeks, we filled it together. Tomatoes. Peppers. Lavender. Sunflowers. Every Saturday became gardening day. Soon other neighbors noticed. An older veteran named Frank wandered over one weekend carrying extra flower pots. A retired teacher named Linda brought homemade cookies. 2 neighborhood kids volunteered to paint signs for every plant. Without anyone planning it, Emma's backyard became the place everyone gathered. Then winter came. The gatherings stopped. One snowy evening, Emma knocked on my door. She looked worried. "I need a favor." "Anything." My coworker was diagnosed with cancer. I didn't know what to say. "She's raising her grandson alone," Emma continued. "She won't be able to work for months." "That's awful. I want to help." I nodded. "What do you need?" She smiled. "Remember how everyone came together for the greenhouse?" I did. "I think we can do something bigger." Within days, our quiet neighborhood transformed. Someone organized meal deliveries. A local mechanic repaired the woman's car for free. Teenagers shoveled snow from her driveway every morning before school. A bakery donated fresh bread every Friday. I built a website where people could volunteer anonymously. No one asked for recognition. No one expected anything back. People simply showed up. Watching complete strangers care for someone they'd never even met changed something inside me. For years I'd believed people mostly kept to themselves. I couldn't have been more wrong. Kindness had simply been waiting for someone to begin. Months later, Emma's coworker recovered enough to return home. The first place she wanted to visit wasn't work. It was our neighborhood. She stood inside the greenhouse surrounded by flowers beginning to bloom again. "I don't know how to thank all of you." Emma shook her head. "You already did." "How?" "You reminded us what neighbors are supposed to be." That spring the greenhouse overflowed. We had more vegetables than anyone could eat. Instead of letting them spoil, we donated baskets every week to the local food pantry. Soon restaurants contributed leftovers. Gardeners donated produce. Families added canned goods. What had started with one broken greenhouse quietly grew into a community project helping hundreds of people each year. Reporters eventually heard about it. They wanted interviews. Photos. Recognition. Emma politely declined every request. "It's not about me," she always said. "It's about what happens when someone decides not to look away." I understood exactly what she meant. Because I'd almost looked away that afternoon. I'd almost convinced myself someone else's sadness wasn't my business. Instead, one awkward glance over a fence became the beginning of friendships I never expected. It taught me that loneliness often hides behind neat lawns and polite smiles. That the strongest people sometimes need someone to simply ask, "Can I help?" And that kindness is rarely complicated. Sometimes it's holding a crooked board while someone tightens the screws. Sometimes it's delivering soup. Sometimes it's pulling weeds beside someone who misses their mother. Years have passed now. The fence is still there. Old. Weathered. A little crooked, just like the greenhouse once was. People often ask why we've never replaced it. Emma always smiles before answering. Because fences aren't always meant to keep people apart. She's right. Sometimes they're simply waiting for one person to look over with compassion. And another brave enough to say, "Come on in."